I still remember the exact moment she said it, her voice low and almost hesitant, like a secret she wasn't sure she wanted to share. "I've never been with someone younger." The way she looked at me then, eyes tracing every line of my face like she was memorizing a language she thought she'd never speak, it felt like a challenge wrapped in a question. I wasn't sure if she wanted me to answer or just wanted me to stay quiet and listen. "Her name is Elise. She lives next door, in the apartment with the pale blue door and the tiny balcony where she grows orchids. She moves with a grace I can't quite describe, like she's part of a dance I don't know the steps to, but want to learn anyway. She's in her mid-40s, confident, but something in the way she carries herself, a subtle hesitation in her smile, the slight tremble when she brushes her fingers against my arm, makes her feel both distant and achingly close. I'm 24, probably too young to understand everything she's holding inside. But standing here, in her living room with the faint scent of jasmine and old books swirling around us, I can't help but be drawn in. We had been talking for a while, about nothing and everything. The kind of conversation that's half silence, half laughter, where words don't quite catch what's really between you. And then that line? Her confession, or maybe it was a warning. I didn't say anything at first. My hand was resting on the edge of the worn wooden table between us, and then, almost without thinking, hers reached out, brushing lightly against mine. The touch was brief but electric, like the difference between a spark and a flame. I caught the quick intake of breath she tried to hide, the way her eyes flicked away, and then back again. Her skin was warm, a soft contrast to the coolness of the room. The light from the street lamps spilled through the curtains, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and curl around us like a secret cocoon. I could feel the pulse of her close, steady, a rhythm that matched the quickening in my own chest. "Then let me be your first addiction," I said quietly, the words almost falling from my lips before I could stop myself. She froze for a moment, that confident mask slipping just enough to reveal something real, something fragile. The silence that followed was thick, like the air before a storm. Her eyes searched mine, searching for the meaning behind the reckless hope in my voice. I wanted to tell her I wasn't here to be just another fleeting thing, but the words tangled up somewhere between truth and fear. Before she could answer, the sharp sound of the doorbell broke through the quiet. Both of us jumped slightly, like being pulled out of a dream too soon. Elise's gaze didn't leave mine as she moved to the door. There was a hesitation there, a pause heavy with what was left unsaid. And in that moment, between the touch, the words, the sudden interruption, I realized something was already beginning between us, something neither of us could stop. The door creaked open. Elise's footsteps echoed softly down the hallway, slow and deliberate. When she returned, the door closed quietly behind her, but something in the way she held herself, half turned away, as if bracing for judgment, pulled me deeper into the space between us. She sat back down, fingers lightly grazing the rim of her coffee cup, tracing invisible patterns. "I wasn't always like this," she murmured, eyes fixed on the dark liquid. "I used to think I had it all figured out. Marriages, plans, stability." Her voice cracked just a little, the kind of break you only hear when someone's guarding a wound. "Then, one day, I realized the plans were just cages." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. My own past felt like a shadow I couldn't shake, years of feeling like I was always on the outside looking in, never quite enough. "I guess I've always been scared of being invisible," I said, voice low, trying not to sound like I was reaching too hard for her sympathy. She glanced at me then, eyes narrowing with something like understanding, and maybe surprise. "Invisible is worse than being seen the wrong way," she said, almost to herself. "Especially when people start to whisper about you." The air between us thickened. I knew what she meant. The age difference was a silent wall. She was graceful, polished, experienced. I was still rough edges and restless nights. People would talk. People already did. But standing here, close enough to catch the faintest warmth of her breath as she leaned forward, all I felt was the undeniable pull. Her hand brushed against my arm, soft, accidental or not, and I caught the shiver that ran through her. She pulled back quickly, eyes darting away like she just crossed a line. But the moment had stretched, waited, and I could still feel it lingering, like the aftertaste of something sweet and dangerous. "I don't know what this is," she whispered, voice barely audible over the hum of the city outside. "But it scares me." I swallowed, heart thudding in a way that made my fingers clench the edge of the chair. "Maybe that's the point." She looked up then, eyes locking with mine, searching. No words needed to cross between us. Just that unspoken electricity, the breath held too long, the way time folded around this fragile new thing between us. Her hand found mine again, this time with purpose, and she squeezed gently, as if promising she wasn't ready to let go just yet. Outside, the night deepened, but inside, the quiet crackling between us was enough to light the dark. The soft buzz of my phone cut through the thick silence, vibrating against the wooden table like an alarm. I glanced down. Elise's name flickered across the screen. A moment of hesitation before I answered, heart thudding. "Hey," I said, voice quieter than I expected. Her eyes were already on me, sharp and questioning. It's just my sister," I mumbled, trying to sound casual, but the words stuck in my throat. I could feel her watching me, the tension tightening like a coil between us. The conversation was brief, but enough to yank me out of the fragile bubble we'd been floating in. When I hung up, Elise's gaze didn't waver, like she was weighing something, or trying to guess the pieces I wasn't showing her. "I'm sorry," I said, running a hand through my hair, the awkwardness settling in my chest. "It's complicated." She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, her fingers lightly tapping the edge of her mug. We sat closer now, the space between us shrinking with every stolen glance. Her eyes flicked to my lips, then back to my eyes, the unspoken question hanging heavy in the air. I swallowed hard, the warmth of her breath brushing against my cheek when she leaned just a little too close. Her hand brushed mine again, a slow, deliberate touch this time, and my pulse jumped. For a heartbeat, it felt like the room disappeared, leaving just the two of us caught in a fragile moment on the edge of something neither of us dared to name. But then the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway, a sharp reminder of the world outside this room. Elise pulled back, the fragile bubble shattering with a quiet, breathless laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We shouldn't," she whispered, voice trembling just enough to betray the steel beneath. I nodded, though every part of me ached to reach for her, to close the distance between hesitation and desire. "I know," I said softly. "But it's hard to pretend." She looked at me then, that mixture of longing and fear reflected back in her gaze, and I realized neither of us was ready to let go. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she slipped her hand into mine, fingers intertwining like a silent promise. Outside, the hallway light flickered, casting shadows that crept closer, but inside, we were pulled closer than ever, together and yet still worlds apart. The night had folded around us like a secret, thick and almost unbearable. Elise sat closer than before, her shoulder just barely touching mine, but every nerve ending felt alive, every brush of skin like a spark set loose. I could hear the faint rhythm of her breath, uneven now, caught somewhere between hesitation and something raw, unspoken. Her fingers trembled against the back of my hand, and without thinking, I reached up, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. The movement was small, tender, but it sent a shock straight through me. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, ever so slightly, until her breath grazed the shell of my ear, warm and sweet like the promise of rain. "I shouldn't want this," she whispered, voice low, trembling just enough to sound like a confession. "You're so much younger." I'm not sure I'm supposed to be here." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady, but the heat in my chest made it impossible. "Neither am I said. "But I can't stop thinking about you." Her eyes flicked up, searching mine, glistening in the dim light. There was something desperate there, a longing tangled with guilt, fear curling at the edges. I saw it, felt it like a weight between us, heavy and suffocating. "You don't have to pretend with me," I said, voice rough, almost breaking. "I'm not some fantasy you need to run from." She hesitated, then bit her lip, hard, like she was trying to hold back a storm. And then, suddenly, her hand tightened on mine, pulling me closer until our faces were inches apart. I could see every detail. The way her eyelashes fluttered, the faint sheen on her lips, the slow rise and fall of her chest. For a moment, nothing else existed but that fragile, breathless space between us. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Scared of losing control." I could feel my own breath hitch as my lips hovered near hers, heart pounding loud enough to drown out everything else. The room held its breath too, the silence stretching, waiting, taut like a wire ready to snap. Then, just as the world seemed to tilt, the sharp click of the front door unlocked shattered everything. Her eyes snapped open wide. She pulled back, barely conscious of the distance between us. "Someone's coming," she breathed, panic flaring beneath the surface. And just like that, the fragile moment broke, leaving us both suspended on the edge of what could have been, the question hanging thick in the air. The sharp knock at the door was barely a whisper, but it slammed through the quiet like thunder. Elise froze, her hand tightening around mine so hard my skin prickled. The tension pulled tight, stretched thin between us, fragile as glass. I rose slowly, heart hammering, eyes locked on her face, her breath caught, lips slightly parted, vulnerability raw and unguarded. The door creaked open, and standing there was Anna, Elisa's sister, eyes sharp, a flicker of something unreadable shadowing her gaze. "Elise, can we talk?" Anna's voice was soft, but beneath it was steel. Elisa's back stiffened. "Now isn't really I need to tell you something," Anna interrupted, stepping inside, brushing past me just enough to send a jolt through my arm. I watched Elise bite her lip, eyes darting between Anna and me, her usual grace crumbling under the weight of the moment. Anna's gaze landed on me for a fraction longer than necessary, a look that said she knew more than I did. "I overheard you talking the other night," she said, voice low, almost a whisper. "About him." Elisa's eyes snapped to mine, shock rippling across her features. She stepped back, trembling hands folding tightly in front of her. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as if the walls themselves were closing in. "I didn't want you to find out like this," Anna continued, her tone softer now, but urgent. "I'm worried for you." Her words struck deeper than any accusation. Elisa's lips quivered, and she swallowed hard, her gaze falling to the floor. I saw the shame flicker there, the fear of being judged, of losing control. For a moment, silence hung heavy between us, broken only by the faintest catch in Elisa's breath. Then she looked up, eyes brimming with unshed tears and something fierce. "I'm tired of hiding," she said, voice shaking but determined. "Of pretending that what I feel isn't real." I stepped forward, heart raw and exposed. My fingers brushed hers, not quite reaching, but close enough to ignite the space between us. "Neither am I whispered. The words were fragile, but they carried everything I'd been holding back. Elisa's shoulders relaxed just a fraction, her hand trembling as she reached out, finally closing the gap. Our fingers intertwined, warm and steady against the cold weight of fear pressing down on us. Anna lingered by the door, watching, waiting, but didn't say another word. The risk was clear now. The world outside was no longer a distant worry. It was pressing in, demanding choices, daring us to fall or flee. And as Elisa's eyes locked with mine, I knew we were standing on the edge of everything. "We can't go back," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Then we don't," I said. The room seemed to shrink until it held only the two of us, breathing, trembling, caught in a moment too charged to ignore. Elisa's hand was warm in mine, but the tremor there whispered of the battle raging beneath her calm surface. We stood so close that I could see every flicker of doubt and desire in her eyes, the way her breath hitched just before she spoke. "If we do this, if we cross that line, there's no going back." I nodded, voice barely a whisper. "I don't want to go back. Not to the silence, not to pretending." Her fingers traced the back of my hand slowly, like she was memorizing the texture, the weight of it. "You're younger," she said, voice soft but steady. "There are things you don't see yet. Things I'm scared will change us, change me." I swallowed the lump in my throat, stepping just a fraction closer. The space between us was charged, electric, fragile, full of everything we hadn't said. I don't want perfect, I said, eyes locked on hers. I want real. Even if it's messy. Even if it's hard. Her lips parted, breath mingling with mine. The scent of jasmine and something else, something wild and unspoken, wrapped around us. Her hand moved to my cheek, fingers trembling as they brushed over the faint stubble. Time slowed. The world outside fell away until there was nothing but the quickening beat of our hearts, the warmth of skin against skin, the promise hanging between us like a fragile thread. I'm scared, she admitted, voice breaking just enough to shatter the last walls. But I want you. I reached up, hesitating for the briefest second before closing the gap. Our lips met, not with the perfect ease of a storybook kiss, but with the raw, trembling urgency of two people who'd waited too long. It wasn't smooth or graceful. It was messy, breathless, full of hesitation and longing. But it was ours. When we pulled apart, just barely, our foreheads rested together. Eyes closed, I could feel the slow settling of something fragile but fierce, understanding, acceptance, and a quiet promise that neither of us would walk away. Elise smiled, small and real, and whispered, "Then let's be messy together." And in that moment, with the night wrapped around us, I knew we had found something worth the risk. The morning light seeped softly through the curtains, casting a pale glow over the small apartment where we sat tangled together on the worn couch. Elise rested her head against my shoulder, fingers tracing lazy patterns on my arm, each touch steadying, grounding. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of everything we'd carried through the night, fears shared, doubts laid bare, and the fragile understanding that maybe this, us, was worth the risk. I was scared, Elise admitted quietly, voice thick with the weight of nights spent wrestling with what-ifs. Scared that the age between us would be too much. That people would see me differently, see us differently. I tightened my hold, squeezing her hand gently. I've been scared too. Of not being enough. Of being a mistake. She lifted her head, eyes meeting mine with something tender, something real. Maybe we don't have to be perfect. Maybe we just have to be honest. I smiled, the kind that reached my eyes. Honest sounds good. We stayed there for a while, no rush to speak, just the quiet comfort of being close. Her breath warmed my skin, and I leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead, simple, intimate, a promise without words. There was no grand gesture. No sweeping declarations. Just two people learning to trust the space between them, filling it with something real and messy and human. Do you think? She started, then stopped, the hesitation still there but softened by hope. I waited, knowing she'd find the words when she was ready. She smiled, a slow, genuine curve of lips that said everything without needing to say a thing. I squeezed her hand again and whispered, "We'll figure it out. Together." The world outside could keep its judgments and whispers. Here, in this small, quiet space, we had found something that didn't need to be perfect to be enough.